Hey, welcome back to the stash. There's one thing in particular about the Marvel Universe and even comics in general that just feels so natural today, and that's the privilege of having heroes cross paths constantly. So often characters appear in each other's stories without it ever feeling forced. Spider-Man can stand next to cosmic heroes, street-level vigilantes, or the Fantastic Four, and all just works. It's the kind of connected storytelling that feels normal now, especially in the day and age where almost everything is a crossover. But it wasn't always like that. There was a time when Marvel's characters, even though they shared the same universe, didn't constantly interact in a structured, ongoing way. Team-ups happened, but they weren't the foundation of the entire series, and instead a fun bonus for the story of the month. But then in 1972, Marvel introduced a brand new title that kinda changed the entire landscape of the industry. And that comic was Marvel Team-Up. Now, as you could guess from the name, Marvel Team-Up was built entirely around one idea. Take Spider-Man and pair him with someone new every issue. And from the very beginning, the concept is very clear. The first few issues bring Spider-Man together with the Human Torch, placing him in direct collaboration with one of Marvel's most established heroes from their best team around. After that, the series expands outward, issue by issue, pairing Spider-Man with characters all across the Marvel Universe. From heroes like the Cat, all the way to Hercules. The structure doesn't change at all, nor does the premise evolve into something more complex. It stays consistent. Well, all but the very rare occasion the Human Torch would actually get a shot in the spotlight. But the main idea and premise is exactly what makes it important, as well as work as well as it did. Because Marvel Team-Up is remembered for one defining storyline or one major story arc. And while it technically has it, it doesn't really rely on long-form storytelling. Instead, it does something else entirely. It basically establishes a way for Marvel's universe to feel connected, flexible, and alive. And more importantly, it proves something about Spider-Man that becomes essential to his identity. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about the forgotten hidden gem that is Marvel Team-Up. But hey, real quick, here at the Stash, we're swinging for 27,000 subscribers. That's a tall order, I know, but with great power comes great responsibility. And all you gotta do is click subscribe. So if you're into Spider-Man or just comic book deep dives, feel free to stick around. Also, if you play this random game, I don't know if you heard of it, called Fortnite, you can now use my Fortnite creator code MNstash in the item shop, which helps directly support me and the channel. Listen, any support truly means so much, and I appreciate everything you guys do for me. But one last thing, be sure to stay at the very end for a very special episode of Comics from the Stash. This time we're going over all my issues of Marvel Team-Up for my very own comic collection. But with that all said, let's get right back into the video. Now, to get a real feel as to why Marvel Team-Up even matters, you have to look at what it actually is at its core. The series began in 1972 and actually ran until 1985, reaching well over 100 issues along with multiple annuals. Across that entire run, the structure remains remarkably consistent. Spider-Man is the lead, and every issue pairs him with a different character. That's basically the entire concept. There's not really an overarching storyline that runs throughout the entire series, but stories do expand across multiple issues and tell a really good overarching tale. It dives into it sometimes, but not in the way that most comics, even of that time, were often starting to do. Each issue mostly functions as its own contained story built around a specific pairing, with a deliberate structure. And while the first three issues in a sense feel unique to the rest, since Spidey and the Human Torch were the pairings, the comic immediately establishes this format within issues 4 and onward as the template for everything that follows. From there, the series continues to introduce new combinations. Spider-Man teams up with heroes from completely different corners of the Marvel Universe, whether it's street-level characters, cosmic figures, supernatural heroes, or even members of established teams. They all cycle through the series. And yet, despite the rotating cast, the constant presence is always Spider-Man. Well, for the most part. It's the consistency which, in my opinion, holds the series together, because without him, the concept doesn't really work. Like the issues with the Human Torch or even the Hulk never really felt as exciting to me because I just want to get back to Spider-Man. But what I believe Marvel Team-Up is really doing is testing how flexible Spider-Man is as a character. Plus, he probably sold the best as well. Every issue places him in a different environment. Every issue puts him next to someone with a different tone, power set, or a perspective. And it's always fun to see how Spider-Man clashes with those differences or adapts to them. That's what made the format sustainable for over a decade. It doesn't rely on escalation or even on continuity-heavy storytelling, as it instead opts for the pure fun interactions that come with all these pairings. Each issue, in a sense, becomes an experiment. What happens when Spider-Man is placed in this situation? How does he respond to this character? What kind of dynamic forms between them? Each question, each possibility, all extremely valid within the title, because the series has the freedom to explore these combinations without restriction. That freedom is what defines the experience of reading Marvel Team Up. At times, the structure can feel repetitive, especially when you just really want to read every single Spider-Man comic there is, and the setup does get very familiar. Spider-Man meets another hero, a conflict emerges, and they work together to resolve it. And while there's kind of the sense of progression, it's not really in the traditional sense, since it kind of almost felt separate to the main ongoings in like The Amazing Spider-Man, Spectacular Spider-Man, even Webber Spider-Man. It isn't necessarily a flaw in the design though for me, as it's kind of the design itself, and I do really love how the series is so committed to its core premise, with consistency always being at the forefront. One of my favorite impacts of Marvel Team Up is how it doesn't simply exist as a collection of standalone stories, because over time it contributes to something larger. It helps normalize the idea that Marvel's characters don't just coexist, but rather interact regularly. Like, sure, the comics would occasionally dive into the concept, but it felt much more special in a sense when that happened. So by pairing Spider-Man with such a wide range of characters, the series reinforces the idea that the universe is interconnected in a practical, ongoing way, almost like it's the standard. In my opinion, that matters more than it might seem, because when you see Spider-Man move between different parts of the Marvel Universe so frequently, it starts to feel natural. The boundaries between different corners of that universe begin to dissolve as they all become a part of the same space, and I just love that Spider-Man is the one moving through it all, because while the concept is team-ups, the reality is that Spider-Man is the constant variable that makes those team-ups work. He anchors the entire tone, and no matter who he's paired with, Spider-Man brings a sense of familiarity that the comic, in my opinion, needed. It's also why I always preferred this comic over the supervillain equivalent. Now, not to say there isn't some hidden gems there either, of course. His personality, his perspective, and his way of reacting to situations remain consistent even as everything around him changes. That consistency allows the series to take risk with who he teams up with. Doesn't matter how different the other character is, because Spider-Man bridges the gap. And over time, that reinforces a larger idea about his role in Marvel, that he can exist anywhere, alongside anyone, without losing what makes him recognizable. That adaptability becomes one of his defining traits, and Marvel Team Up is where it's constantly tested. At the same time though, this series plays a role in shaping how crossovers are also perceived. Before something like this, crossovers would feel like events. They would feel like moments where characters come together for a specific reason, often tied to a large narrative within whatever title. But Marvel Team Up kind of removes that barrier. It treats it all as normal, with Spider-Man teaming up with other heroes as its entire premise. It happens every issue without needing justification beyond the story itself. And over time, that approach influences how Marvel presents its universe. Crossovers become more common, shared storytelling becomes more fluid, and not to mention how characters feel less isolated from one another. Marvel Team Up manages all of this through something we mentioned earlier, and that's its insane consistency. Issue after issue, pairing after pairing, it reinforces the same idea, that this universe is all connected, and Spider-Man is one of the clearest ways to show that connection. That's why long-form storytelling coming second doesn't really undermine the series for me at all, and instead it strengthens its purpose, because the goal, in my opinion, is for it to build a pattern, one where interaction is normal, and where Spider-Man can step into any situation and still feel like himself. That's the real contribution of Marvel Team Up. It doesn't tell one plot, but rather establish an entirely different way of telling stories. Marvel Team Up isn't a series that's often brought up when people talk about Marvel's most important comics. Hell, it's not even a comic I see talked about all that much in general, and that's a real shame. Because Hidden Away is a title that I think deserves more respect. Sure, to some, the repetition is too much, but in my opinion, there's a lot of hidden gems here. Plus, it's just so much fun seeing Spider-Man team up with literally anyone within the world of Marvel Comics. Now, on the surface, I understand how the book can feel pretty simple, given it's got a rotating cast, a familiar structure, and a consistent premise that rarely changes. But for me, that simplicity is what allows it to do something lasting. By committing to the idea of pairing Spider-Man with a different character every issue, the series creates a space where interaction becomes the focus. It removes the need for crossovers to feel like major events, and instead presents them as a natural part of the Marvel Universe. Plus, some of the covers were just so cool. I mean, come on. Over time though, that approach shapes how the universe feels, with Spider-Man being at the center of it all. No matter who he's paired with, no matter where the story takes him, he remains consistent. That's what defines the series, and that's why it still matters. Because Marvel Team Up proves something that became essential to Spider-Man as a character. And it's no matter where he ends up, he will always maintain the very core that makes him the amazing Spider-Man. For me, it's a major reason as to what makes this series worth remembering. Not for one story, but for what it managed to build over 13 action-packed years. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Comics from the Stash. Today we're going over all my issues of Marvel Team Up from my very own comic collection. So without wasting any more time, let's get right into the showcase. We're actually going to begin with a bonus issue here, because this is not the 616 version, it's actually the 1610 version. It is Ultimate Marvel Team Up Issue 1. Then to kick off the original series, we have Marvel Team Up Issue 150, which is actually the last comic of the title. Then we got Iron Man and Spider-Man here with Marvel Team Up Issue 145. Then we got a pretty decent key issue with Marvel Team Up Issue 141, as it's the second appearance of Spider-Man's black costume, tied with Spectacular Spider-Man Issue 90. And after that is Marvel Team Up Issue 103, which is actually the second full appearance of Taskmaster. Up next is Marvel Team Up Issue 95, which is the first appearance of Bobby Morse as Mockingbird. Then we got Spider-Man and Iron Fist in Marvel Team Up Issue 63. After that is Spider-Man and the Wasp with Marvel Team Up Issue 60. Then we got Marvel Team Up Issue 48, which is the first appearance of Wraith, as well as the first appearance of Jean DeWolf. And to end off this showcase, we have the biggest issue out of the bunch. It is Marvel Team Up Issue 1, which is also a retconned first appearance of Misty Knight. But it has been it for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have enjoyed, please do like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already, because here, any support means so much. And yeah, thank you guys again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.